pretty sure like deli meat is like linked with cancer, FYI.
I'm like terrified of being poisoned by rice that's been left out.
Most people think like fruit is like a really good dessert. So it's actually not good for you.
We're in an environment that's not setting us up for success anyway. So you actually like do have to, kind of like our health, you kind of have to sit in the driver's seat, be the captain of that team, and like figure out what works for you.
The standard American diet, like it's SAD, like SAD. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Not So Sick Chicks.
Woo! So happy to have you guys. Again, loving the community building. Thank you guys for subscribing. This week, we would love for you to send this to a friend or family member who is struggling with inflammation.
Yes. And aren't we all? I think
truly all
inflammation is one of those, inflammation is one of those things that it just runs in everyone's body. It's kind of just like a degree of like how inflamed are you. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. I know for me, I've been traveling quite a bit, so I'm getting back into the routine, but also trying to maintain, a good eating lifestyle while I'm traveling. So it's been a challenge, and we'll talk about some of those challenges today. Alex, do you feel like good about your current eating, nutrition routine, or where are you at with that?
I'm getting back on the horse. The last several weeks, I feel like when I was like in my depressive episode, I kind of like let things go to the wayside, which is horrible. But I think we all probably do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably like the first thing that goes is like your eating routine.
Healthy routines. So yeah, like I would eat gluten and dairy. I would take my supplements to like help with the enzymes to break them down. But I mean, I have had a lupus rash on my face. I get it so bad right here when I eat those things. And it has been just like consistent. And that makes me not sleep as well. I get kind of cranky. So I'm recommitting to my healthy habits.
Good. Yeah, that's important.
I think so too. And I think that means we can dive into this week's episode, which is going to be all about food.
And nutrition.
Yes.
I would say for me, like that's like if you find me at like a dinner party or something and like you sit next to me and you want to talk food and nutrition, like that is like my happy place. Like that's what gives me so much like joy and energy. I just think there's so much out there about food and nutrition, like good and bad as far as like misinformation and then good information. So I think that's one of the most like fun topics that I love talking about.
I love it. I can't wait. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from you this episode, which is very exciting to me. And also a disclaimer, like these are Biz and my experiences with food. We are not nutritionists. We're not holistic health coaches or anything. And we will be bringing one on because we love learning and we're total dweebs. But this is kind of like an intro to less inflammatory diets.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's like, to your point, it's things that we've tried and things that are working well for us. And so I think the big thing with nutrition is like, it's not a one size fits all. And so everyone has to tailor to what works for your body and what works for your lifestyle.
Absolutely. Okay, so to kick off, I think like let's set the stage here. Biz and I grew up in like 90s, early 2000s. Everything was processed. Everyone and their mom ate Lunchables. So highly healthy foods, obviously. And that, I think, has set the stage for our generation to have a lot of inflammatory issues. When was the first time that you decided like, I want to start paying attention to like what I'm putting in my body? Was it at diagnosis or before?
I would say it was probably like, so growing up, yeah, so similar to you, like grew up eating, like my mom cooked every dinner. So like that was amazing because we ate like super, I would say like healthy, quote unquote, like what we thought was healthy at the time. But a diet that was like pretty heavy in dairy and animal meat, like eggs, chicken, beef. And so, but it was healthy in the sense like she was cooking it at home. It wasn't like store-bought or processed. So doing the best that we knew at that time. And then I think for me, like luckily, like throughout like my teens, because like I grew up playing tennis and was super active, like I didn't have a lot of issues with my weight. It wasn't until like I was like post-college, like 23, 24 years old that I started to put on some weight. So that was like my first intro into what am I eating and how is this affecting me? So I think when I first started doing my research, it was more it was more like visual based and more you could call like superficial, like weight based, and less health based. Like anything that I could find that was like labeled like low calorie or, low carb, that's what I would reach for. And I wasn't really looking for like whether those things were processed or not. So I think, yeah, like mid-20s is when it started. And then it's kind of just like each year like grown, like my interest for food has just grown since then. What about you?
Mine is like totally the opposite. So I grew up in the Midwest, heavy gluten and dairy country. Meat and potatoes covered in cheese and ranch. It was awesome, but dear Lord, did it make me feel awful all the time. So in college, after a big autoimmune flare-up, my mom and sister were like, hey, what if we try doing some like holistic things? What if you eat less gluten or less dairy and like see how it makes you feel? And so that was my first foray into like learning about food and kind of focusing and paying attention to what was in my diet and in my body. And so I started eating a little bit differently. And I saw that I felt a little bit better. At that age, I didn't want to accept it. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to still have my beer or bread. Or I lived for bagels at that time. So like didn't want to give any of that up. Yeah, so it was always health related. And like you, it's like every year I've grown more and more interested in that because I can accept that there's like there's a correlation. It's not just a correlation. I mean, there is a end result of what we put in our bodies.
When was your first like introduction to the word gluten, and when did you first learn about it? Because I think for me it was like as recent as a couple years ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I first learned about gluten in college. So like, yuck, almost 10 years ago. And I had a very intimate relationship with gluten. I ate a bagel every morning. I had Lunchables in my purse when I went out to a bar for a little crinky snack. We were in love. But I had to break up with it.
What was your favorite Lunchable?
Oh, the pizza one, hands down. A little bit messy for the bar scene, but...
So you would be at a bar like making little pizzas?
Yeah.
Like putting the sauce on, putting the cheese on?
I thought it was endearing,
I think it's cute. What about the turkey one?
No, I have like a thing where I hate those like processed meat. I think that they're slimy. Any kind of like sliced meat.
Like a deli meat, you don't like that?
Ugh, no. I think it looks slimy.
I used to love that texture, like that deli meat texture.
That is, I think you should talk to your therapist about that. It's concerning. Signs of a psycho.
There's some like deep-rooted issues there if you like deli meat.
Cooper also loves deli meat.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm so weird about it, but I've always been super creeped out by deli meat. Unless it's sliced in front of me.
Okay, got it. You don't like pre-sliced.
No, the ones that are in like the...
oh, I love those. I used to
chills.
eat those, like, I would just eat those by themselves. So, like, roll them up into little bites and just, like, snack on those.
I mean, it's like a good snack, I guess.
Not really. I'm pretty sure, like, deli meat is, like, linked with cancer, FYI.
Yeah, like high carcinogens.
Yeah, but it was, like, once in a while. I think all of these things, it's, like, eating these things one-off is not going to get you, but, like, having them in your regular diet, I think that's kind of the issue.
You think, like, maybe a Lunchable every day would be bad? Like, how do we feel about that?
Seems a little high, but again, I'm not a nutritionist.
I'm going to say shame on me on that one. None of that is real food.
Okay, so you learned about gluten in college, and then so currently you are gluten-free, and then what other dietary restrictions you have?
I'm also dairy-free, or I try to be dairy-free. I don't like sugar. I don't eat sugar.
You don't like sugar?
I don't. Okay, so I have a salty tooth, not a sweet tooth.
Okay.
I also have a peanut, like very severe peanut and tree nut allergy. And like all of those candies when we were kids were like processed in the same facility or whatever. So I grew up not being able to eat any of that. And so I think that's why I'm like, I would rather like have something savory than have something sweet.
Okay.
And then last thing is like I don't drink all that often, maybe like, I don't know, once a month.
Yeah.
But that was really hard. Like all of those things to give them up was incredibly hard.
Yeah. I mean, if you're at a bar eating Lunchables, like that's kind of the breeding ground for all those things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a new me. Me without Lunchables. But that's how I learned about gluten. What about you?
Yeah. I think like recently learned about it, recently being a couple of years. I think over the last few years, like we talked about, so inflammation is the name of the game, right? So I think when I got diagnosed 15 months ago, I think I was probably likely in a really high inflammatory state in my body. And so after I got diagnosed, I started doing more research into what foods are inflammatory, getting away from like what food is like just clean or not processed. I think that's like for me like wasn't enough. I wanted to take it a step further and see like what's actually going on inside my body. And I think the changes that I've made now, I mean like inflammation, you can't technically like measure it, right? So, but like I think I feel less inflamed.
I think that is how we measure it probably right now. I think that there's some really cool science going on that will show us how to measure micro or nano fluctuations in inflammation. But right now, it's like, do we have bad brain fog, insomnia, digestive issues? Are we fatigued beyond what would be normal for the chronic illness community, and skin issues? Like that.
Skin issues, for sure.
Yeah. The gut is like the second brain. And also the gut is technically like the lining is like skin. So I think everything that we're eating, like that's how it shows up. So if any of those symptoms kind of resonated, like might be time to look at the gut.
Yeah. I honestly think for me, like the gut is almost like more important or like as equally important as brain.
100%. I mean, 80 to 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. Like, what? So crazy.
Which is wild.
Makes sense why when I was depresso and not eating well, it was like a double whammy.
Yeah. Completely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you started researching and got diagnosed, I know a lot of people probably had opinions on what you should eat. How did you navigate that? Which ones were you like, yes? Which ones were you like, ah?
I mean, so I think when you get diagnosed, like literally everyone has an opinion on what you should be eating and what you should not be eating.
And doing.
And doing too, yes. And so I think actually a lot of, you know how there's like fear-based parenting?
Yes.
I think there's also fear-based eating. So,
ooh, yeah.
Like people will be like, they'll list off like, don't eat sugar, don't eat meat, don't eat dairy. And it's like, that's fine. That's one way to do it is like, let's remove all these things. What's been helpful for me is like more so thinking like, what are things that I can add into my diet? And then like with that change, like that shift of mindset, it feels less restrictive and it feels more welcoming of like new food groups.
That feels very approachable.
It feels, yeah. And it's less, I think like negative and scary.
Absolutely. And I think like that allows you to navigate everything that is out there and figure out what works best for you. Because like you said, it's not one size fits all when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay. So you parse through everyone's ideas and opinions on what you should be eating.
Right.
What were some of like the first things that you did to keep your inflammation down? What does like food-induced inflammation really mean?
So for me, like when I got discharged from the hospital after that month stay, like I basically looked like I was 7 months pregnant. Like I was like outwardly so swollen. And I think that was a combination, like I was on prednisone, which is a steroid. And that gives you that like swollen, inflamed look.
You gain weight on it. It's
tough. Yeah. But I knew like it wasn't just that. I started getting these lymphatic drainage massages. And so I think that really helped with the prednisone swelling and like water retention. And then after like 2 months of those on a weekly basis, I was like, okay, I still like don't look like myself. Like my skin was like rashy. It was like red, itchy. I was getting rashes on my legs actually. And so then I started digging in deeper into like, what am I eating? And I think like I'm big into like watching food documentaries.
Yeah, me too.
Like they're really fun. And like, especially when you're like laid up in bed or on the couch and like you don't necessarily have the energy to like read like a heavy book about food, like watching a documentary can actually be like really relaxing. And so I think I just like watched like a bunch of documentaries, and then I was also doing reading on the side as well. But that was kind of my process, like documentaries plus reading.
I think that's a great process, and I think it's a approachable way to like learn because you're consuming in a low risk way.
Totally. I think a couple of documentaries that really stood out to me, like one is Forks Over Knives. Have you watched that one?
I love that one. Yes.
Yeah. So that's like, it's more geared towards like a plant-based diet. And it's actually really cool because they have like professional athletes, like NFL players, and they put them on a plant-based diet, and they see like they measure like their blood and like certain other markers, and they show the improvements of like eating plant-based versus animal protein. So that one was good. And then like, gosh, there's like silly ones out there that are just like fun, like Super Size Me back in the day. It just shows you like when you eat like, I think the guy ate like McDonald's for 30 days, like every single meal. So that was just like, I mean, I'm like everything in between those is like kind of what I watched, and they're good. They're definitely informative.
I think so too. And they're informative, and also some of them are like a little snake oily. So I think everything that you watch and read, like take with a grain of salt. Remind yourself that like there is someone funding whatever you're reading or watching that might have an agenda in mind.
Totally. I mean, a lot of like, so what I like about some of these documentaries is that they point out, like they go talk to like dairy farmers, and they talk to like meat manufacturing companies, and they look at these studies, and like a lot of those studies that say like beef or chicken is good for you is like funded by these farmers, which is wild. So like the same people that are telling you like to eat eggs and to eat chicken or beef and all this stuff are the same people producing those things.
Yeah, it's the corporations. It's nice. Capitalism at its finest.
Yeah.
And I think like all those documentaries also like super highlight that the, SAD, the standard American diet, is pretty bad.
Isn't it funny how like the standard American diet, like it's SAD, like sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's sad.
It is sad.
It's wild. And so it's like we're in an environment that's not setting us up for success anyway. So you actually like do have to, kind of like our health, you kind of have to sit in the driver's seat, be the captain of that team, and like figure out what works for you. And there are infinite different diets that are out there. So navigating that can be really hard. So maybe like quick overview of what those include. We have everything from paleo, vegan, plant-based to pescatarian, ketogenic, carnivore diet, and then like the in-between states, which are like Mediterranean, autoimmune protocol, alkaline diet, and then we have like the rebalancing diets, which are like the detox protocols, maybe the medical mediums juicing thing, which is super viral, SIBO, which is like a low FODMAP, low inflammation, very restrictive diet. And between all of those, there's probably even more. We're supposed to just navigate that and figure out what works for us on our own. And that's hard.
It's so hard.
So how do you approach these diets? Like, how did you figure out what worked for you? What's your like rule book that you have?
I think so. Like, honestly, when you were listing all those, like, I think I've tried all those. Like in the last 10 years, like I have been paleo, I've been a pescatarian, I've been the Mediterranean diet. I've been vegan for a little bit, and where I've landed is like the most important thing for me is like what's actually sustainable. So like all those things were fine. I could do them for like 6 months, 9 months, a year. But at some point, I always felt like I wasn't, like my body was telling me that it needed something else. And so where I've landed essentially, I joked about it previously, like I'm like vegan-ish. But what I really mean is like I try to eat plant-based. So like what I try to like hold myself accountable to is like this 80-20 concept. So like 80% of the time I'm going to eat a plant-based meal. And then 20% of the time I can have an animal protein or dairy. And so that for me has been really sustainable. And so it's something that like is easy to handle. So like 80-20, like because I am a dork and I like did the math on it, like that means like 3 to 4 meals in a week I can have something outside of a plant-based meal. And so it's really easy, especially like when like you're traveling or you're out of the house and you can't necessarily like find exactly what like diet you're trying to stick to. It makes you feel less guilty that you're not, you know, sticking to it. Or like, I actually don't even like the concept of like a cheat meal or cheat day, because it kind of like makes you feel like you're cheating or doing something bad, versus like this is already something that I've like planned for.
A treat day.
Yeah. A treat day. I like that.
Mm-hmm. That's what The Rock calls it. So I think we should steal that one for sure.
Yeah.
I like anything that he does, basically. That's interesting, Biz. And I think that is like the most sustainable way to figure out like an anti-inflammatory diet that you can do forever. And then there's like certain things. So like for autoimmune stuff, if I eat gluten,
Mm-hmm.
and there's other autoimmune diseases like celiac, that can have like severe consequences. So sometimes you do have to like 100% eliminate certain foods, and it can be hard. But I think almost like viewing it like a food allergy, that's helped me in my perspective of like, I'm going to stay 80-20 on most things, but the things that make me feel fucking awful, those I now have a quote unquote allergy to.
Oh, I like that. Or like a zero tolerance, basically. Like you just can't have it.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So Biz, you're mainly vegan.
Yes.
When you do eat animal protein,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean like red meat, beef,
Okay.
how
The good
the
stuff.
hell do you navigate? Yeah, the good stuff. How the hell do you navigate that?
So beef is an interesting one for sure. So I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of times at like restaurants and definitely at grocery stores when you're buying beef, it'll say grass-fed. And that's kind of like the route to go, is what we've been told, right? Is like grass-fed is better than grain-fed beef. But it goes a little deeper than that. So unfortunately, like grass-fed can be misleading. Grass-fed can mean that it was just like the cow was fed grass at some point during its life, not the entirety of its life. And so you could feed it like grains, corn, soy, garbage essentially, and give it grass for some portion and label it grass-fed. And so you have to be really careful and look for 100% grass-fed or grass-fed and finished. And that means like the entire life of the cow, like it's only eaten grass.
I have to say that marketers are doing a really good job of confusing people on what's healthy and what's not healthy.
Exactly. Because like when you label something grass-fed, you can essentially mark it up and people will pay more money for it, but you're not getting what you're paying for. So that's like
misleading.
It's misleading. And so that's a big tip. Definitely like look for 100% grass-fed or grass-fed and finished.
Okay. That's huge. Thank you.
What about I know for me, so like organic is like the way to go, like clean. What are some other like things that you try to like stick to for you?
I try to like do the locally sourced approach. That can be obviously incredibly expensive, or if you're in a rural area, hard to find.
Yeah.
The greatest hack that I've had for that is this awesome company called Farm Box. I think there's other variants like Milk Run or something like that. And basically it's a company or platform that pools all the local farms in your area. You then pick what you want in your box for the week, and then they bring it to you on a certain day of the week. It has cut our grocery bill down our groceries are now a fourth of what they used to cost using this. And it's because there's no markup from the grocery store. You're really just, I think the platform takes a percentage, but really you're putting the money back in the hands of the farmers who are kind of getting screwed anyway. So I like that idea as well. And it's organic, it's, clean, it's whole foods. And also since it's local, it's seasonal. So like you're eating what the earth is providing you around each part of the year. And I like eating like that because I think that's how kind of like our genetics work.
Yeah, I think that's how our ancestors ate. Like they ate what was available fresh to them during those times, and not, we've gotten into this like with preservatives now, like everything's available all year round. So that's definitely something to look out for. I think one thing that I'm very careful about is produce. And I think like to that seasonal point, it's like organic, I think is number one, right? So like you want to make sure, like when I say organic, it means like no chemicals, no pesticides, no, it's like non-GMO. But like I think fresh organic is the route to go. And if you can't find fresh organic, then frozen organic is better than fresh non-organic. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. The markup to organic can also be a lot. So one of the like ways to get around that, I think, is also just being specific about what you want to be organic. So the Dirty Dozen, don't buy any of that non-organic. Clean 15, those you can do. So it's navigating, like there are ways to integrate a cleaner, healthier, more whole food diet without breaking the bank.
Completely agree. And I think if you can't, yeah, like if you have to buy non-organic, like you can bring your groceries, your vegetables and fruit home and like really scrub them down to where you'll feel like you'll get a lot of those like chemicals and pesticides off. And that's like another tip. If like you have to buy non-organic, like really just like come home, put like baking soda in your sink and like let them soak in water for a little bit and get those chemicals off.
Absolutely. That's even if we buy organic, we still do that exact process. There's a couple great like TikTok influencers that tell you if white vinegar or baking soda is the more appropriate detoxifier. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but those are the two things that I think Biz and I both use to make our diets have less of a chance to have these like heavy chemicals going into our body.
So you don't eat a lot of dairy. Mm-mm. Do you eat eggs or no?
I do. Actually on dairy, so I don't eat cow dairy.
Okay.
I will have goat or sheep.
Okay, which is less inflammatory.
Less inflammatory, exactly. So like feta, I eat that, and I eat goat cheese. And if I really want something, a super hard, super aged cheddar or Parmesan, that can be less inflammatory. The longer it's been aged and the harder the cheese, the less inflammatory it is what I've heard.
Okay, got it.
What about you? Do you eat dairy?
I like cow milk has never sat well with me, like since I was probably like 18 years old. It's always given me stomach issues. And so I haven't had cow milk in like a decade, longer than that. Unfortunately, like almost like close to 2 decades.
Oh, bye cows.
Like for example, like ice cream doesn't bother my stomach. And I think there's like different amounts of lactose and like different dairy products. And so I think cow milk has a higher amount of lactose than ice cream does sometimes. So I think that's probably been it for me. But like eggs, I think I will try to have them once in a while, maybe like once a week. I'll try to incorporate eggs somewhere. I think there's like when you go to the grocery store and you look at all the egg options, I feel like that can also be overwhelming. So I think the best, what I've like researched and found, like one, the egg should be brown on the outside versus like a white colored egg. So if you can get to that, I think.
What is the white colored egg? Like why is it white?
So it's like a different type of chicken is my understanding.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's like cage free versus like organic versus like pasture raised. And so like cage free eggs just means like the chickens like weren't in a cage, like they're just kind of like roaming, but they never go outside, which is not good.
Oh,
yeah.
Sad. Okay.
It's really sad. And then there's like free range eggs, which like the chickens have access to go outside, but they don't necessarily spend a lot of time outside. And then there's organic, which means that they do spend a good amount of time outside and there's no pesticides, chemicals fed to the chickens. And then the best you can get essentially is pasture raised, which means it's organic and it also spends a lot of time outside.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Because like the more like you coop up these chickens, like the more hormones they release that are essentially like they go to the egg, which you then consume.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Speaking of eggs, I have a very funny story for you.
Tell me.
So back in 2020, Cooper and I went plant-based for a while. And we were with my family at one point, and my mom, bless her heart, was like, all right, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to get you a bunch of plant-based stuff. And she found this tofu-derived egg replacement.
I don't know how good that sounds, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's about as good as it sounds, which is not good at all. And I remember eating it being like, all right, I can't be plant-based anymore. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm out of here. And after my family left, we were like, okay, so back to Mediterranean diet? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. My sweet mom had like put all this effort into
finding that for you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom.
That is sweet.
Yeah. And then I never ate the tofu replacement egg again.
I'm like curious to go look this up now.
Give it a try. I mean, I would be curious to see your thoughts on it. I'm also just like not a big tofu gal.
Same.
I like it in miso soup, and that's about it.
That's so funny. I'm the same way. I just don't love it.
Texture,
I just don't. Yeah, I think it's texture. And then even when I've had like really good tofu, I'm just like okay about it.
Yeah, I've never had like amazing tofu.
Yeah, I just don't see the point.
Someone in our listenership, if you know a great tofu place or recipe, just let us know. We're always open to try again, but that is where our stance is right now.
Totally.
This podcast is not brought to you by Big Tofu. Okay, so what do you do for like replacements then for some of these things?
So I think initially when I started eating more plant-based, I went down the route of finding like animal replacement items. So like I went like the Beyond Meat route and all of that. And then I learned that those are highly processed as well. And so yes, it's not animal protein, but it's like high in saturated fat. And so I like slowly phased that out as well. So really like I'll eat mainly vegetables, and for like my protein, I'll do like lentils, beans, things like that. And then like I'll incorporate like brown rice or like quinoa. That's kind of like, and then avocados. I love avocados.
They're like the new superfood for anti-inflammatory.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. What about you? What are like your go-to, like what do you eat in a day?
So like you, I went the alternatives route, and then Cooper and I realized like, you know what? These recipes aren't going to taste the same no matter what. So we've got to find ones that we can eat that aren't trying to be something that they're not. So the way that Cooper and I eat is when we're, watching TV, about to go to bed, I'll sit on Instagram and I will like search gluten-free meals or plant-based meals. And if I find something that looks good, then I figure out the recipe, and then I add that to our next week's meal calendar. Cooper then goes through it and is like, yeah, I can make that. I can try to make that. Approves it. Then we go grocery shopping together, and that's how we approach like our week of eating. And we don't do, like, if we're not eating meat, we're not going to have a tofu taco. We're going to have a vegetable fajita taco. And that's the approach. Like, it's just too hard to do it otherwise. And then you feel sad that it doesn't taste like what you're craving at all. And that's the hard part about doing those diets. So just find new things that you like.
Totally agree. Honestly, like that's exactly why like I go back to that 80-20 concept. Like there are so many times like randomly I will be like, okay, I really want like chicken. And like I'll just go and actually eat like chicken instead of finding like a chicken substitute, which isn't going to cut my craving anyways. And so I found the exact same thing. Like if I want to have the chicken or beef or whatever, then I'll have that. And otherwise I'll find recipes that are plant-based, and like I think they just taste better when you're not trying to substitute things.
What's your favorite plant-based meal right now?
So this lentil soup I put on my Instagram a couple weeks ago. Like that's like a weekly staple. Like every week we have that.
Do you like batch make it and then eat it over several days, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I'll make it and then like it'll probably last that and then like 2 more meals after that. So like I'll usually have it for lunch, like a day or two later. And then Farouk will have a little bit like the next night for dinner. I don't love leftovers. I want to eat it fresh.
Okay, well, apparently also leftovers are higher in histamines, and histamines are an inflammatory thing. So honestly, as I've told Cooper, it's not my fault that I don't like leftovers. I'm doing it for my inflammation levels. I just want every meal cooked fresh.
That being said, I think like that lentil soup though, you can batch make that and like keep that for the week and it'll be totally great. So I think for a lot of people, like batch cooking and like meal prepping is really important. Like they need that in their schedule. So I think finding recipes that like stay in the fridge is like a good route to go. And again, if you're eating more plant-based, like you have a longer life for that than like chicken or beef.
Absolutely. I think like curry is our go-to right now. We do like a veg curry and keep the curry part in a separate container and then make new rice every time. I'm like terrified of being poisoned by rice that's been left out.
So my friend was visiting this weekend and she told me the same thing. Like there's something with rice. Like what is it? Like you can't keep it in the fridge too long.
It's like even 24 hours, it develops this bacteria. And I think it's like how long it sat out at room temp and then got into the fridge or something like that. But it develops a bacteria that makes you have awful food poisoning.
That's crazy.
My brother's gotten it enough times for me to be like, I'm not fucking around with old rice.
I really honestly thought like rice was like the safest thing to keep for several days.
Alas, it is not.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you have not had the food poisoning. That data point would make my brother's argument better.
And what are some other like quick ads or changes that like have worked for you to add in?
So I think for me, like I just like to look at the plate and see if there's a lot of color. And if there's a lot of color, I know like, okay, I think I'm checking all the boxes without having to be like too focused on it. I want to make sure that there's some like whole foods there. And I think that really helps. Like a good balanced plate is what we want to see. I think the other thing, which is, maybe less common, is like fermented food is so good for your gut.
So good.
I love it. I think it's something you have to maybe learn to love. But it will do wonders for like your gut microbiome. So adding that in as well. Also, I think another inflammatory thing that's like very specific to you and your diagnosis is soy.
Yes.
How do you feel about soy?
So I've asked my oncologist like so many times, like, what is her opinion on soy? Like, should I so like my cancer is a hormone-driven cancer, and soy in high volume increases your hormones as a woman. And so I've asked her, and her take is like, it's fine to leave it in. Don't have a ton of it. She thinks that you have to have a lot of soy to have that increase in hormones. That being said, I personally think most soy that you find is highly processed. And so again, like anything that's like highly processed equals high inflammation. And so because of trying to eat this like low inflammation diet, I don't include soy into my diet.
That's really, really interesting. That's something that I've struggled with a lot because it's the alternative for me from nuts. So if I want like a peanut butter, my go-to is either chickpea butter, sunflower butter, or soy nut butter. And I gotta say, I don't love the sunflower or the chickpea butter. So I eat that soy butter, but it does give me anxiety.
Yeah. And I mean, are you having it daily or are you having it a couple times a week?
I have it daily. I have it in my smoothie almost every day. So that's not great.
Yeah. I mean, just check like where your soy is coming from, right? Like you can, I don't know. I'm like really weird. I will randomly call up like food companies, like food manufacturing companies and ask questions. You can call them up. Yeah. You can email them. You can call them and be like, hey, I have questions.
Please share an experience of doing that. That is amazing.
I mean, a lot of times like you end up, the person who on the receiving end isn't super knowledgeable. It's usually like, I think the phone lines are more for like issues, like a shipping issue, like your order didn't arrive or like something of that sort.
There's salmonella in this batch.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't necessarily like learn a lot. You get transferred a lot, but I will call them up and ask sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. Next time I need to do that, I'm just going to ask you and see if you've talked to them already. What about the broccoli shot? So last time you were in Austin, you brought me this Brock shot thing.
Brock shots, yep. So
Tell me about it.
okay, so Brock shot is this it's a supplement. So they send you like packets and a little like container, and you put the supplement powder in there, and then you just add water to it and have it daily. It's basically like broccoli sprouts, and like really, really highly potent. And broccoli sprouts are shown to be like a superfood essentially. So they are like full of like all of the supplements, minerals that you need essentially.
Okay, that's cool.
So yeah, my doctor told me that sulforaphane, which is in there, like the potency of it could interact with my chemo med that I'm on. And
interesting.
Yeah. So like for me, like I have to check everything I take, like any supplement, I have to check it to see what the interactions are. And that's a tricky thing with supplements is that it's like when you're on these chemo drugs, like you just have to be really careful. And that's why it's like, it's better just to like incorporate the food into your diet. So you're getting some of the benefits of it versus like a really potent amount of it.
Yeah. I think it actually can be dangerous to by yourself just start taking supplements.
Yes.
You are very lucky that your Western doc will, kind of oblige you on should you take this supplement or not. I've not had that experience.
What has it been like for you?
They say that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not quite sure if that interacts or not. But I work with a functional provider, and she does all of the checking of interactions and whatnot for me. So I know I'm in good hands. But if your Western doc is not comfortable, checking supplements for you or certain adds into your diet, find a functional provider. I work with a functional nurse practitioner, and so it's like a fraction of the cost of the normal functional doctors, and that to me has been like the biggest treat because functional medicine was something that was like out of reach for me due to like financial constraints.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that functional medicine isn't covered like Western medicine doctors are.
Oh my God, yeah. Or supplements. They're so damn expensive.
Yeah. So you can actually ask your doctor, because a lot of these supplements they can be prescribed by your doctor. So you can ask them, and then maybe it's covered by your insurance. Like that's something that I've done for like I take like vitamin D, like a B complex and like a multivitamin, and my oncologist actually prescribes them, and those get covered by insurance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Going to explore that. I pay for all my supplements out of pocket right now, and it is a hefty bill.
They're expensive. They are so pricey.
I'm also on like 20 supplements. I with mixed connective tissue disease and the meds I've been on, my gut was like destroyed. I also was like on antibiotics for the first few years of my life because I had food allergies, and the pediatrician thought that's how that was treated. And that was the standard of care at that time. So my gut has been like screwed so badly my entire life. That said, I have absorption issues. So like I don't get all of the nutrients from the foods that I'm eating. So I have to use supplementation. Some of that is like oral supplements. Sometimes I get IV supplements. But I'm like, that's the goal of working with my functional doctor, is that we can move through all of the kind of blocks that I have and get my gut lining to baseline. And then hopefully I don't have to have all these supplements.
So you said absorption, which kind of like takes me into like the first thing that went off in my head is like, does your functional doctor talk to you about food combining?
A little bit, but I think you know more about food combining than I do.
So yeah, so we'll talk. So the reason it popped into my head is like when you have absorption issues, like food combining, from my understanding, is like a really good thing to try to incorporate. So
okay, walk me through it.
So basically, food combining, it's actually been like studied heavily. It's not talked about a ton, unfortunately, but it is like you can Google it and you can research it. Like there's a ton of research that shows like this is an actual thing. So it's not just about like the food you're eating, it's about the order that you're eating it in. And the reason that is, it's like because like imagine like your intestines as like a train track, right? So like running through, and then like each thing you eat is like a train car. So like, let's say you're eating something that's like digested really slowly and it's like moving through your intestines, and then you eat something that's like digested really fast. It basically like speeds up and like runs into this. And then like they both like slowly move on the first one. And like whatever was like eaten later, you don't get the benefits of it. It like isn't absorbed as it should be. And then it also kind of like rots in your stomach. And so there's like a double effect. So when like people talk about like bloating, indigestion, like that's kind of what's happening in your intestines.
That's really, really interesting. I'm someone who struggles with a lot of intestinal issues. I have like chronic constipation issues. And then when I finally move through it, I have the other end of the spectrum, and it's super tough. So I want to learn more about this because I feel like that could help during those times.
Let's talk about the different food groups. You have starches, you have protein, you have fruit, and then you have fats. Okay, so fruits are absorbed the quickest. So they take about 20-30 minutes to digest. And then starches are second. They take about 2 to 3 hours to digest. And proteins take the longest. It takes about 4 hours for them to move through your intestines.
Holy cow. Like animal proteins or all protein?
All proteins. So plant proteins as well. So like lentils, beans, legumes, all of that. So what I try to do is like, I try to eat fruit first thing in the morning. So like I'll have, and you know how like most people think like fruit is like a really good dessert.
Yeah.
So it's actually not good for you to do it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So like if you have fruit first thing in the morning, your body digests it like right away. And then like you can eat, like for lunch, I try to eat like a starch meal because it takes a couple hours for that to digest. And then like I'll keep my proteins for dinner time.
That is very interesting. I also would imagine that like starting with fruit, then like your digestive tract, kind of like the enzymes wake up a little bit and they're like ready to go for when you have something that's harder to digest.
Exactly. And I know like, so like we both have a really good morning routine, right? So like when you are sleeping, like your body is in like the state of detox, it's in a state of rest. And so like the first thing you eat in the morning or the first few things you eat, like that's going to give you like the most impact and like the most absorption. So like I start my mornings with like, I'll do my shots in the morning. So I'll do the wheatgrass, I'll do the turmeric, the lemon, ginger. And then I follow it up with like a warm water with lemon.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to incorporate like the apple cider vinegar in there. Although it's just like really,
I can't do it in the morning.
It's just so tough, the taste of it. But if I do, like if I am incorporating it, I'll try to do it then. So it's like the first thing it's seeing.
Okay.
And then I'll follow it up with like a green juice, which I'll put a little bit of fruit in there.
I love it. Okay. That seems like a very reasonable routine for your food.
What do you do in the mornings?
I would say not good. Not excellent.
I thought you had a good morning routine.
I do have a good morning routine, but I have coffee like first thing, which is really bad. And I know it is, but it's my vice. So I have my coffee first thing, and then I also am someone that like I think it's because of the meds I'm on, I get really, really nauseous in the morning. Or it could be from the coffee, now that I just said that. So I usually have breakfast a little bit later. I have the same thing for breakfast every single day without fail, which is a fruit smoothie with like a plant protein powder, this like digestive supplement that has all the amino acids. So if I'm having a really bad nausea day or digestion day, and that's all I can eat, I'm still covered across the board. I put soy nut butter in that, bananas, and then, you know, all the fruits.
Okay. That's not, so yeah, I think the thing with coffee, it's like, it's acidic, right? And so when your body is in an acidic state, that's when like cancer cells are thriving. That's when tumor cells are thriving. Your autoimmune stuff is probably affected with that as well. Thriving. Yeah. I didn't want to say that.
We're thriving. Overactive immune system. Thank you.
So yeah, I think it's tough though. Right? And I think that's part of our culture is like the first thing you have is coffee or tea. And it took me a long time to not do that.
How did you break it? Like, how do you break that habit? That I can't kick it.
I think I still will have a coffee or tea, but I'll have it after I have these couple of things. So I think it's not like I didn't feel like I was breaking a habit. I just was, again, it's like I felt like I was adding in good things. So I was like, I'm going to add in these 3 things before I have my coffee or tea.
I love how you're saying this. It's like very positive mental space around nutrition and nutrition routine. I think I'm gonna ease myself in. I'm gonna maybe do like 1 or 2 days per week where I'm not starting with coffee and see how that goes and see if I can get there. There was a time period where I didn't drink any coffee, so like I know I can do it.
Yeah, and I don't think like you have to remove everything that is fun or that you enjoy, right? Like just add in the good things, and then I feel like you kind of dilute like the effects of the bad stuff as well.
That's true. Yeah. I wonder if I struggle with that because I have had to do like the autoimmune protocol diet or like low FODMAP for SIBO, and they're so insanely restrictive. And you can't have like a flub day on those because you're essentially like rehabbing your entire gut, or like getting a gut bacteria to go away. So I think those times were very difficult to hold to.
And you probably have a little bit of like PTSD, right? It's like when you you're probably like, oh, like that was so restrictive and like such a hard time that you don't want to make your daily routine a version of that.
Yeah, totally. And it's probably like a control thing too, where I'm like, I am controlling that I am having this coffee first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Haha. Really sticking it to myself on that one. Like I'm not winning.
That's funny. Did the food combining, did that make sense? Did it resonate?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any like specific questions around it?
How do you think about like building out your meal plans with this food combining routine in mind? Because it kind of seems like you have to be thoughtful about it.
So I think like having like a plan for the day, right? So I know I'm going to have my fruit in the morning. So like I have it, I'm done with it. I throw it in my green juice and I'll just have all those together. And then in food combining, like vegetables are a free for all. So you can have those at any point during the day. You don't have to think about when you're eating that. And then like just knowing that like my starches are my lunch is helpful, right? So like if I want to have like a brown rice with like some steamed veggies, or if I want to have like quinoa, or if I want to have like a salad, I'll just make sure to add like a starch in there.
Okay.
To make it more filling. That's kind of like my go-to lunch. And then for dinner, like whether I am eating like chicken or beef that day or having fish, I know like that's my dinner meal and I'll have it with veggies. I won't add starches to dinner. And so that's helpful. But also another thing I found helpful is like when I'm traveling, when I don't necessarily know what I'm going to be able to like have access to.
Yeah.
I'll just have like a starch day or a protein day.
And that interesting. Okay.
And that way I'm not thinking like, okay, like I have to get this for lunch and I have to get this for dinner. It's like today I'm just going to have starches and vegetables. And then like the next day I'm having like protein and veggies. And that makes it easier for me.
That sounds kind of fun too. Like a theme. I love a good themed day.
Theme day. Yes.
Dietary theme days. I love it. Okay. Well, I'm excited to try this week and see how I feel.
Yeah. I think for me, like I feel like food combining has helped like with digestion. It's helped with inflammation. It's helped me overall like have more energy. Feel less bloated. And overall, I think it has like had like very like notable beneficial effects.
Awesome. Okay. Notes taken. Let's talk about water.
Yes.
Because water is also insanely important.
Water is important. What's your take on water?
I didn't think it was a big deal. I've always been someone who's drank a lot of water. I didn't think it was a big deal what kind of water it was until I watched Down to Earth, that Zac Efron docuseries on Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
They have an episode on water, and they went like deep dive in on the different types of waters and like what can be in our water if it's not filtered correctly. And I was like, damn, okay, there's so much more to water than I knew. So now like, you know, I go through these seasons where I like focus on quote unquote detoxing different parts of our lives. So maybe that's getting rid of the plastic Tupperware and getting into glass. That's one season. So this was a water season, and I went through and put filters on all of our taps, a filter in our shower because that water is disgusting. You can like Google your city's water quality online. It will spook you. But it will also make you make changes.
Do you know the name of that website? I can't think of it right now, but like you go in there and you put in your zip code and it'll tell you like all the contaminants in your water, all the like different like minerals, et cetera. But we should we look it up real quick?
We'll post it on our story.
Okay, let's do that.
It's a great website. So I put like the Jolie filter in my shower. I have like, because I have autoimmune skin stuff, I did actually notice a difference in that, which was huge to me because sometimes that feels so like out of left field on what it's doing, even if my diet's perfect. Obviously stress is a play on that too, but I think water also was, or water quality. And then drinking water, I don't drink out of plastic ever anymore. It freaks me out how much it can leach into the water. So glass only or aluminum. I mean, stainless steel, not aluminum.
Not aluminum.
No, don't do that. Yeah. What about you? You like went full tilt in the water.
I went crazy into the water world. I haven't watched that documentary. I'm actually really curious now to watch it. But yeah, so like in the cancer space and autoimmune space, like, so when your body is like going through these diseases, like it's usually in like an acidic state. And so having alkaline water helps to balance out that acidic state that your body's in. And so like first I started having that, I think it's called Essentia.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I used to drink only. Yeah.
That's an alkaline water. And I did like more research and I found that it's not necessarily like highly alkaline by the time you drink it. So it is like when they're processing it, when they're like in the machines, but by the time like you open it and you drink it, it's not necessarily there anymore. And so I went a step further and bought a machine. It's called the Kangen machine. And you hook it up to your like tap water at home and it creates alkaline water for you. And you can like choose the different like pH levels that you want. So essentially like all I drink now is like 9.5 pH water, which is like very high alkaline. And that's like what I use for like all my smoothies, all my juices, drinking water. Even my dog Bella is drinking that. So I think she's going to live till she's like 80 years old now.
That bougie girl. I love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
But I think it's like it's removing the impurities, and then also like alkaline water has like higher minerals and like more benefits for your health.
Interesting. How did you figure out that like there's so many different types of waters, like reverse osmosis or like ozonated water. How do you like navigate? How did you land on alkaline water? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think just like a lot of research, like a lot of reading, watching a lot of like YouTube, like just random people like talking about like the like benefits like they've had from drinking alkaline water, and actually was like more so introduced to like this specific machine through a like support group that I'm in. And
interesting.
Like one of the guys in there, he's like really big on it, and like a couple other people in there talk about how they're also using this machine. And so that was my intro to it.
Are they pricey?
They are pricey.
Okay. What's not like an alternative for someone if that is a no-go? How can we get high pH water?
I don't know. I actually don't. Yeah. We should, I mean, there should be some alternative.
I think at Whole Foods, there's like a water station that might have high pH. Bummer that essential water is not actually that high of a pH when it gets to you.
Yeah.
I'd been really living that lie for a long time.
Yeah. Which is why, what they want you to think. But, you know, I think like while this machine is really pricey, like if that, like buying these bottled waters is like also expensive, right? If you like do the math over like the number of years, like you're going to spend a lot of money on that. So like this water machine, like if you view it as like investment in your health and like not just your health, like your entire family's health, right? Like everyone in the household is going to benefit from that water. The people in my support group that are going through IV chemo, like take gallons and jugs of this water to their chemo appointments and just like drink that while they're hooked up. And they have said like compared to before, like they have so much more energy, so much less nausea. Their hair falls out less, like notable benefits from like drinking that versus not drinking that.
That is fascinating. I'm going to go on a deep dive tonight.
I was sold on it from like hearing like actual like people who like don't work for this company, like have no reason to, you know, there's no benefit of like just like other than them sharing information. So I'm a big believer of it.
I love that. I think like that is the way to navigate kind of the holistic nutrition functional space is like people's experiences, and then to also know that it's not one size fits all. So maybe your body needs this high alkaline water, maybe my body needs something else, but you know, if you can find the groups that have these experiences and can share with you, it's easier to navigate versus someone that does have a financial benefit from whatever they're telling you about, I think.
Absolutely. I think finding like we've both done this, like we find like role models in our communities that we're like, okay, like this person had this diagnosis and it's similar to mine, or, you know, has like these similarities. And so we'll be like, what are they doing? And, you know, kind of just use that as like one roadmap that you can you can follow if you want.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think maybe to kind of wrap up, we should go over like how do you, this is like it's overwhelming when you go down the rabbit hole.
That was a lot of information. Yeah.
A lot of information, a lot of good information, but when you open the door to like learning about nutrition, there is a rabbit hole, like a total rabbit hole. You will start questioning everything in your life. So where do you start to not get overwhelmed, and how do you like slowly integrate these things into your lifestyle in a reasonable way?
Do your own research and find what works for you. I think that's the most important takeaway I would give people from this. What about for you?
I think so too. And it's, you know, you don't have to learn everything by reading. Biz and I watch documentaries, we listen to podcasts, we watch YouTube videos to try to wrap our arms around this huge thing that is so, you know, critical and crucial to how we live. We'll share this week on our social some of the documentaries that we really liked and felt like offered a really interesting perspective. And, you know, again, like take it with a grain of salt, figure out what works for you. I think there's a couple like tangible things that you also can do. And one of that is like just introducing more fruits and vegetables into your diet.
Yes.
Have a smoothie in the morning, several days a week. See how you're feeling having that increase in, you know, antioxidants and healthy fats. Keep a little food journal or like a notes app on your phone and say like, okay, I had XYZ for lunch. I felt like shit the rest of the day. Dive into that. What happens if you take that one food group out and just do one thing at a time so that you can really understand how it impacts your body and say, how do I feel?
Yeah. I think related to that, I think for me, what's worked really well is like adding in one new good habit every 5 days or so. It's like just one small thing. Like, and whether it's like as simple as like first thing I'm going to have lemon water instead of my coffee or tea. So just start there, do that for 5-6 days. And then after you feel like, okay, like you have a rhythm of it, like add in something else.
Yeah. Or even slower. It takes 21 days to build a habit.
Yeah.
And so if you want to focus on, you know, getting your gut right, try it out. You can do it.
I feel like some of us are on like a shorter timeline given like our diagnosis.
That is true. That is true.
So for me, it's like 5-6 days versus 21 days.
If you can do the habit in 5 or 6 days, that is amazing.
That's hilarious.
And I think the last thing is like, you don't have to do this alone. Biz and I have had so much fun. And by Biz and I mean Cooper and Biz, because I don't know how to cook. I would literally like poison our family. You guys have had a lot of fun, like exploring recipes together.
Swapping recipes. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like every time I've come to your house, like Cooper will make some really amazing clean meal. And when I get back to my house, I'm like, okay, like I'm going to try what he made. And
Yeah.
I will do the same thing. I'll make something and I'll send you guys the recipe of what I like. So I think that's been a lot of fun of just like swapping what we're making. And randomly I'll ask you guys like, what are you guys eating tonight? Just to like give me inspo on what I want to do.
Totally. And then like use social media to your advantage and find new fun creative recipes that are easy to make. And I think the last thing is like you don't have to dive into this by yourself. Like you can use a nutritionist, a holistic coach. Actually, Biz and I were talking about this earlier. Like some insurance companies do cover nutritionists completely. So like Nourish is a company that does that. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I used a nutritionist when I first was navigating this as well. And I actually have this really great document that's like funded by like UCSF, MD Anderson, that talks about nutrition. So honestly, like if anyone wants access to that, like shoot me a note. I'm happy to send it over to you. It's not publicly available, but I have it from someone who gave it to me. So
I love it. We're all in this together to feel a little bit better. And you know, the gut is life. So we got to treat it right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Not So Sick Chicks. Remember, new episodes drop every Monday.
Subscribe and rate 5 stars. And of course, send this to a friend who is a sick chick trying to be a little less sick. We're all in this together.
Follow us on socials at the Not So Sick Chicks.
And we'll see you next week.